this episode, we move into security program management and oversight by looking at governance, risk, and compliance, GRC, artifacts. These artifacts are the documents, references, models, and written sources that help an organization decide what secure behavior should look like. A security program cannot depend only on memory, personal preference, or whatever one team happens to know. People need shared guidance that explains expectations, supports decisions, and creates consistency across systems, teams, and business processes. GRC artifacts help translate broad security goals into something people can actually use. They may explain what should be done, how strong a configuration should be, what threat information deserves attention, how to implement a control, or what a secure design pattern should look like. When these artifacts are chosen and maintained well, they give the security program a more reliable foundation. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. Governance is about direction and accountability. It asks who has authority, what rules apply, how decisions are made, and how the organization proves that security is being managed responsibly. Risk is about uncertainty and potential harm. It asks what could go wrong, how likely that problem may be, how serious the impact would be, and what the organization should do about it. Compliance is about meeting required obligations, whether those obligations come from laws, regulations, contracts, internal policies, or industry expectations. GRC artifacts support all three ideas at the same time. They help leaders set expectations, help security teams make consistent choices, and help auditors or reviewers understand why a certain approach was used. Without artifacts, the program becomes harder to explain, harder to repeat, and harder to defend. A guideline is a recommended way to do something. It is usually less rigid than a policy or standard, but it still gives people useful direction. A guideline might explain how employees should handle sensitive data, how system owners should think about logging, how developers should approach secure design, or how teams should classify information. Guidelines are helpful because not every security decision can be reduced to a strict yes or no rule. Real environments have context, exceptions, and business needs that require judgment. A good guideline helps people make better decisions while leaving room for responsible adaptation. It should be clear enough to guide behavior, but not so vague that every person interprets it differently. The purpose is to encourage consistent security thinking without pretending that every situation is identical. Guidelines are especially useful for topics where the organization wants better behavior but may not be ready to enforce every detail as a hard requirement. For example, a guideline on secure remote work might recommend using trusted networks, protecting devices from public view, reporting lost equipment quickly, and avoiding the storage of business data and personal accounts. Some of those ideas may also appear in formal policy, but the guideline can explain them in more practical language. A guideline can also help newer employees or teams understand the spirit behind a requirement. It can answer why the organization cares, what good practice looks like, and what common mistakes to avoid. In a mature program, guidelines do not replace policies or standards. They help people apply them with better judgment. Benchmarks are more specific than general guidelines because they provide a measured or recommended security configuration baseline. A benchmark might describe secure settings for an operating system, database, cloud service, browser, mobile device, or network device. It may recommend disabling unnecessary services, requiring stronger authentication settings, enabling logging, limiting administrative access, or configuring encryption. Benchmarks are useful because systems often have many settings, and not all default settings are secure enough for business use. Instead of every administrator deciding from scratch, a benchmark gives the organization a trusted starting point. It supports consistency across systems that should be configured in similar ways. If one server is hardened carefully and another is left with weak defaults, the weaker system may become the path an attacker uses. Benchmarks also help with measurement. If the organization defines a secure baseline, it can scan systems, compare actual settings against the expected settings, and identify drift. Drift happens when a system slowly moves away from the approved configuration because of troubleshooting, updates, exceptions, rush changes, or poor ownership. Benchmark-based checking can reveal that logging was disabled, a weak protocol was re-enabled, or an unnecessary service appeared. That does not automatically mean someone acted maliciously, but it does mean the system no longer matches the expected secure state. Benchmarks make conversations more concrete. Instead of saying a system should be secure, the team can point to specific settings and ask whether they are present. This helps operations, security, audit, and management discuss security posture with clearer evidence. Advisories provide information about security issues, threats, vulnerabilities, updates, or recommended actions. They may come from software vendors, hardware vendors, government agencies, security organizations, information sharing groups, or internal teams. An advisory might warn about a newly discovered vulnerability, active exploitation, a required patch, a risky configuration, or a change in attacker behavior. Advisories matter because security programs do not operate in isolation. The outside threat environment changes constantly, and organizations need ways to learn about risks that may affect their systems. A good advisory gives enough information for the organization to ask practical questions. Do we use the affected product? Are we exposed? Is a patch available? Are attackers exploiting this now? Do we need temporary controls while remediation is planned? Advisories become valuable when they are connected to a process. Simply receiving advisories does not improve security if nobody reviews them, maps them to assets, assigns ownership, or tracks response. A security team may need to compare an advisory against the asset inventory, vulnerability scan data, cloud inventory, application list, or vendor records. If the advisory applies, the team may create tickets, notify system owners, adjust monitoring, apply patches, or document an accepted risk. If it does not apply, the team may still keep a record showing that the advisory was reviewed. This process helps prevent important warnings from being lost in email or ignored because everyone assumed someone else was handling them. Advisories are a bridge between external security knowledge and internal action. Implementation guides explain how to put a control, standard, technology, or security practice into operation. A policy might say that sensitive data must be encrypted. An implementation guide can explain what that means for databases, storage systems, backups, portable devices, and cloud services. A standard might say that administrative access requires stronger authentication. An implementation guide can describe how teams should enroll accounts, handle exceptions, and validate coverage. These guides are important because high-level requirements often need translation before teams can apply them. People may agree with the goal, but still be unsure how to carry it out safely. An implementation guide reduces that uncertainty by providing practical direction, expected steps, decision points, and examples that match the organization's environment. Implementation guides should be detailed enough to support consistent work, but they should not become unreadable manuals that nobody uses. They need to match the audience. A guide for system administrators may include different details than a guide for application owners or business managers. A guide for a cloud security control may need to describe ownership, configuration expectations, logging, review, and exception handling. It should also explain what evidence shows that implementation is complete. That evidence might be a configuration report, a ticket record, a test result, an access review, or a screenshot when appropriate. The guide should help teams move from requirement to proof. This matters because compliance is not only about saying a control exists. It is about being able to show that the control was implemented and is operating as expected. Reference architectures are reusable design models that show how systems or security capabilities should be arranged. A reference architecture might show how to design a secure cloud environment, a segmented network, an identity system, a logging pipeline, a remote access solution, or a data protection pattern. The value is that teams do not have to invent a new design every time. They can start from an approved model that already considers security, operations, scalability, and common risks. A reference architecture usually does not describe every exact setting in every environment. Instead, it shows the major components, trust boundaries, data flows, control points, and relationships that should exist in a secure design. It gives people a shared picture of what good should look like. Reference architectures help reduce inconsistent design choices. Without them, one project may build logging one way, another project may handle identity differently, and another may expose services in a risky pattern because the team was moving quickly. Over time, the environment becomes harder to secure because every system is unique in unnecessary ways. A reference architecture supports repeatability. It can show where authentication should happen, where monitoring should be placed, how management access should be limited, how networks should be separated, and how sensitive data should flow. This makes review easier because security teams can compare a proposed design against an approved pattern. If a project needs to deviate, the exception can be discussed openly. That is much safer than discovering risky design choices after systems are already in production. These artifacts work best when they support each other instead of existing as disconnected documents. A guideline may explain the organization's recommended approach to protecting sensitive data. A benchmark may define secure configuration settings for the systems that store that data. An advisory may warn that one of those systems has a new vulnerability. An implementation guide may explain how to apply encryption and logging controls. A reference architecture may show how the data platform should be designed so access, monitoring, and segmentation work together. When artifacts connect, they create a stronger security program. Each one fills a different need. Guidelines support judgment. Benchmarks support measurable configuration. Advisories support awareness of changing risk. Implementation guides support action. Reference architectures support secure design. Ownership and maintenance are critical because outdated GRC artifacts can create a false sense of security. A guideline may describe old technology. A benchmark may reference settings that no longer exist. An advisory process may point to a team that has been reorganized. An implementation guide may rely on a tool the organization no longer uses. A reference architecture may fail to include newer cloud services or identity patterns. When artifacts age without review, people may either ignore them or follow instructions that no longer fit reality. Each artifact should have an owner, a review cycle, a version history, and a way for users to ask questions or request updates. A security program is stronger when its guidance stays alive and connected to the environment it is supposed to protect. There is also a difference between having artifacts and using them well. Some organizations collect many documents but do not make them easy to find, understand, or apply. Others write artifacts in language so formal that people cannot connect them to daily work. A useful artifact should answer a real need. It should help someone make a decision, configure a system, assess a risk, respond to a warning, or design something securely. It should be clear who it applies to and what action it supports. If people must guess whether a document is current, whether it is required, or whether it applies to their system, the artifact is not doing its job. GRC artifacts should reduce confusion, not add another layer of paperwork. The main takeaway is that GRC artifacts are the practical building blocks that help a security program become consistent, explainable, and repeatable. Guidelines give recommended direction for secure behavior and judgment. Benchmarks provide measurable configuration baselines that help teams harden systems and detect drift. Advisories bring outside threat and vulnerability information into internal review and action. Implementation guides translate requirements into practical steps and evidence. Reference architectures give teams approved design patterns so security is built in from the beginning rather than patched on later. These artifacts support governance by clarifying expectations, support risk management by focusing attention on meaningful exposure, and support compliance by showing how obligations are met. A mature program does not treat them as paperwork for its own sake. It uses them to help people make better security decisions every day.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.